the SRF loan, please.
Absolutely. We've got a couple, good evening, everybody. Nice to see all of you. We've got a couple applications that we would like to move forward with as it relates to some of the heavier lifts that we have visited with you about in the past from a capital standpoint. One is with regard to the screw pumps at the wastewater treatment plant, and the other one is with regard to the North Platte Interceptor Sewer Project that we actually were awarded some federal funding for, and we'd like to make up the difference with an SRF loan. The other side of it is we want to talk to you more broadly about what these loans entail and that kind of thing. And so if we could have Tom kind of walk us through these matters and get your direction pursuant to these possibilities, we would, that's why we're here tonight, to walk through with you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Thanks for letting us present this tonight. So we actually have three different SRF loans that we'd like you to consider, and I'd like to give some general kind of overviews of the SRF process and then talk in some specifics about all three of them. So the State Revolving Loan Fund program is funded by the National EPA, and they give money to the state every year. And with that money, they offer low interest loans. And the interest rate on that varies from, you can get as low as 0% if you conform to all the federal requirements, up to a maximum rate of 2.5% interest over a 20-year term. So they're very favorable loans. Historically, the city of Casper has received what's called principal forgiveness. Now that's kind of a funny word for just a grant, which means by the time you've finished the work and they look at writing the loan up, they can consider to write off 25% of the loan amount. So picking an easy number like $10 million, you get to the end of the project, you spent the $10 million, they say, all right, you only owe us $7.5 million back. 2.5% becomes principal forgiveness. A little over a month ago, we drove to Cheyenne to meet with the SRF staff on the State Land Investment Board. And they said they had some new rules within the last year and a half that identified what disadvantaged communities are, which is an EPA requirement, and said that you had to, if you were over 10,000 people, that you didn't qualify for the principal forgiveness. So we made every kind of pitch we could at them. They said, hey, we don't get that much money every year from the federal government, so it's not like we can do principal forgiveness on huge loans. The interesting part is because they've never written a bad loan, which is great for them, they have $180 million in the corpus of each of those funds. Clean water and drinking water are both about $180 million. So our approach, we've written these memos, is that we have to pay back the entire principal, but we're going to continue to work with the State Land Investment Board and do everything in our power to try and get that 25% principal forgiveness. On the sewer side, it's a little easier because guess what? We serve 3 communities that are under 5,000 people, or all 3 that are under 10,000 people. So to me, we have a very good argument there. On the water side, the one that we're looking at for the city reservoir, it's just for the city of Casper, and so it's a little more challenging to make that argument. The good part on that project is we also got $5.6 million from the Water Development Commission in grant funding. So, you know, it's already being supported by some grants. So tonight we have $2.8 million for the Interceptor sewer, and that combined with the earmark fund we got from Representative Hegeman and $450,000 from the fund itself. That's about a $5.5 million project to line the Interceptor sewer. And I know we've talked to all of you. The memo to me did a great job. Krista prepared that, of addressing the condition of that Interceptor sewer. And it wasn't that long ago that we had that cave-in sinkhole. And the good news was the pipe that was downstream from there looked like it was in a lot better condition than the joint where we had the failure. So a little bit of a respite on our concerns, but still corrosion continues to erode that pipe. So $2.8 million SRF loan for that, and ultimately, if we extended that out and said, hey, how does that affect rates? I believe that was 22 cents, 31 cents per month is what that would address the average person's sewer bill. The big one is the Headworks facility, and I think the majority of you have been able to look at the wastewater treatment plant and those screw pumps. So simply put, the sewer comes in 18 feet below ground, and we need to get it about 25 feet above ground so that it can cascade through the treatment process before we discharge treated effluent back to the North Platte River. And so without those screw pumps, that whole treatment process cannot take place. And again, we've had one pump that is can't keep up, it's failed. Another one is spraying some water, and that's an urgent project. We said, hey, if we're going to go into this headworks facility, let's replace all the corroded components, all the slide gates that don't work and everything. And so we're interviewing consultants tomorrow for that project, but we don't have a firm cost estimate, but it's $10 to $15 million. And so we've asked for an SRF loan. On top, the nice part about the SRF loan, unlike a house loan or any other loan, we can ask for a larger amount and we don't have to take the whole loan. So we can ask for $15 million. If we only need to use $12 million of it, then the loan's only written on it, $12 million. The other thing that's nice is we can take draws on that loan throughout the construction, and we only owe the interest on those draws, and not until 1 year after the project is complete is the first loan payment due. So again, we have a lot of flexibility to ask for more money than we need, to put that money to work, and then write that loan up, hopefully get some principal forgiveness on a portion of that, and then move ahead. So on top of the $15 million, we're going to be coming to you fairly soon for a $2 million emergency mineral royalty grant. So we're going to go in front of the State Land Investment Board and ask for $2 million of that money in emergency MRG. Based upon our discussions with SLIP staff, that was what they felt kind of the threshold for the emergency grants was. The customary run-of-the-mill MRGs, they identified that 1 million was kind of the cap on those, but we're going to try and not necessarily shoot the moon, but ask for as much as we can in a mineral royalty grant. So hopefully we can take 2 million off that 15 right off the top. The third one is for the city reservoir. Again, this is a project that was identified in the most recently completed master plan, which is 4 years ago, I think. And that's that buried 10 million gallon reservoir that's over 50 years old, 60 years old, has a 40-year-old liner in it, and it's been leaking for some time, and it's a maintenance problem. It's a challenge from a water quality standpoint. So the plan is to build 2 elevated water storage tanks on that same location, which is right above the golf course. And the total cost of that project is about $17 million. We've got 5.6 coming from the Wyoming Water Development Commission. That's been approved. The document should be up for council approval fairly quickly. And then we also have reserves in the water fund. But we think we can value engineer that project and bring it in a lot closer to $15 and $17 million. So that's why we're asking for the $10 million in the SRF mineral or SRF drinking water loan. So a lot of numbers, a lot of projects. Again, we're going to keep efforting on the grant component of these, the principal forgiveness component. But I'd be glad to address any questions that anybody has.
Any questions for Tom or his team? Yep. Pat.
Thank you, Mayor. So on the replacement on the water tank, the way I read that, it would at first just be, that's 10 million, the old one, and we're replacing it with 3 million?
Yeah, in general, Pat, the old days, more was always better. We did not worry, even when I started 30 some years ago, we didn't worry that much about water quality. But water quality has become a much greater deal in the last 20, 25 years. And so now that we use chloramines as our residual disinfectant, those tanks can nitrify. Don't ask me chemically what that means, but basically the nitrate goes to H3 to NH4. Anyway, we got to flush those tanks when that happens. So when you have too much storage in your system, it's a problem for water quality. It's a problem for maintaining chlorine residual. So the plan is to put 2 3 million gallon tanks up there is what the master plan identified side by side. The idea being you could take one out of service to recode it and still operate with the other one. We're going to look critically at that 3 million gallon and see if we can't reduce the size down to 2 million gallons. And the reason why is we have plenty of pumping capacity at the water treatment plant, which feeds those tanks, and we have standby power. So we think we can, reduce those size of those tanks, which saves us money, and it helps us on the water quality side, that we're not storing a bunch of water and it's not getting old. Chlorine stays in the water for only so many days and continues to dissipate.
Other questions, comments? Do we need a direction on this, Carter, or is it just informational?
If you don't mind with thumbs, that would be helpful.
Is everybody okay with going forward with this? Thank you.
Mayor, just for clarity's sake too, I wanted everybody to realize these are on the formal council meeting for approval tonight. So I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that we weren't trying to slip anything through, so to speak.
So thumbs down wouldn't have worked anyway.
It would have out on the floor.
You could easily amend the.
Definitely
That is true.
would have
Never
killed
mind,
us.
forget it. Great. Well, thanks, everyone. All right. Trail Center land.
Yes. Many of you recall back in, I'm going to say 2 years ago, we had the opportunity to work with the Conservation Fund as sort of an intermediary between the city and the BLM with respect to property that the BLM had interest in that surrounded the Trail Center. As you all know, that property that surrounds the Trail Center is city property. And indeed, if there is going to be a transaction to be made, it would have to be between the city and the BLM. But the Conservation Fund, however, gives us the opportunity to have an agency that works for the both of us and can make that facilitation happen, help us apply for the funds that the BLM would make available in order to put the land forward, as you see here in the exhibit on your screen. That blue line was drawn around the property of interest to the BLM, mostly because they were looking for ways in which they could expand their programming and build for the future, as it were, that the Trail Center and the BLM have in mind for a great many years down the road, as you might imagine. One of the questions that some of you had early on with respect to this, this shape and how we delineate between property that the Trail Center would potentially and the BLM would potentially get and land that the city would retain is with regard to the northeast corner of that shape. The area that I'm just going to point to the screen here, if you don't mind. The area that you see here that's kind of indented is somewhat of a pond feature that we have used in the past for the outdoor expo, and indeed has served a role, albeit I'm not sure whether or not that will continue into the future. Nonetheless, if it does, that does stay with the city and with the, that can be used for events that occur at the event center. Another question that we've gotten is with respect to parking needs up here. Many of you know that we have done work, albeit crude work, in order to expand what is available here by way of parking. However, you also know that with the advent of the ranch and with the advent of the cowboy lot, which expanded way more than we expected would be able to, we are not so sure that an adjustment of the blue line relative to this parking area is necessary any longer. And so from a staff perspective, we're comfortable where that alignment lays, albeit in an informal capacity on this exhibit. We feel very comfortable that parking needs, particularly in that part of the campus, is not going to be needed as we move forward. So what I'd like to do is take up those conversations again with the Conservation Fund and the BLM and see if we can't make a transaction happen, which would be, tantamount to a sale that the city of Casper would receive the benefit from, and move forward through the process, which is lengthy and involved, and essentially take it up again pursuant to the agreement that we have with the Conservation Fund and indirectly the BLM.
Questions for Carter?
So if I could point to the map.
So I'm wondering what the circle does, if that was part of the outdoor expo, what that is about.
Mr. Mayor, I think, Council, you're referring to the pathway system in there? Is that what you're talking about?
This circle.
Yeah, yeah. Zulema, do you have any insight with regard to whether or not Fort Wyoming Center would need use of that for their expo purposes?
Mayor, Counselor, I do not believe so. If I remember correctly, the improved trail is actually here. That's an actual concrete trail. This, while it looks that way, I believe is just soft surface trail, and to the best of my knowledge, we do not use that.
Yeah.
I would have to double check with the staff at the Fort Wyoming Center, but that's what I believe.
And one more, Mr. Mayor, so I still have concern that I'll most likely be a no vote. Because I think in the future, we need to protect that corner for parking. It's just my thought.
So, Mr. Mayor, what I would say is in response to Councilor Sweeney's observation, we can certainly amend the blue line to take in the remaining portion of that roughed out parking. It would not be an area that goes all the way to here. That has never been the intent, and certainly is not the intent or the capacity now. You would probably see the blue line come just a little further in if we take in the footprint that we currently have. And so that's certainly something we could do, but I don't think we need to take off that whole corner as it relates to a parking expectation, because that is just simply not in the plans to expand that far.
Similar line, should we get to the point where we're able to realize some of the renovations at the Fort Wyoming Center that we've, have had in the study that we did, have we cramped ourselves too much by pushing kind of this boundary right up against that area that would hinder our ability to renovate that facility?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, Councilor, I assume you're talking about this line here.
Yep.
My view would be that, again, we can certainly amend that line as well to anticipate future growth there. But I am not aware that with the master plan that we've amended on over the last couple of years, that the footprint of the building here would come, this far over. Certainly we can give ourselves some more room. I mean, that is definitely an option that council has, because again, for the most part, these lines are relatively arbitrary. Certainly it gives us a feel for what it is that they're looking for. But if council would like to make a couple of amendments to this shape, we are in the position to do that as we take up this conversation again.
Or when would you need that kind of recommendation? Do you want that recommendation tonight? Would you see this kind of organically moving forward? It sounds like, because Pat had some concerns, it sounds like Amber had some ideas.
What I would say for tonight is all I really need to be sure of with council is that you're comfortable with us taking up the conversation again. We do not need to make finite or in stone the shape that this land takes in terms of what we ultimately transact today. We have the time, we will have the capacity and several spots along the way to formally adopt an agreement that will use this as an exhibit, that will be accompanied by survey work and those kinds of things. With the feedback I have tonight, I certainly have what I need to work with. But please, by all means, we do not have to determine the shape of that blue, delineation this evening.
So it sounds like, council, that it's basically having the conversation to, or being okay with giving the green light for Carter to start the conversations again. But it sounds like we're down the road a little ways before we can start talking about boundaries and start talking about that.
We've got plenty of time.
Okay.
In that regard, absolutely.
So with 4 minutes left before we have to get out there, we can have plenty of time to discuss that, but I just want to see if council's amenable with Carter moving forward and having that conversation at the very minimum. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm fine with that, except that's not how the memo reads.
Oh, okay.
The memo lays out that that's the pitch, is the blue line. And so as long as we're have an understanding that, I think I would rather the city be in control of that area so that the BLM doesn't do something a little hinky and compete against the halo, is a major concern. Plus, I still have concern for parking down the road, so.
Do you want to respond to any of
Oh,
that?
I'd be happy to. To be emphatic, we have plenty of time to figure out the shape of that blue line. And the reason the BLM would like the property is so that it can't be sold for private development. So they've made that abundantly clear from the beginning of this conversation. And I would say a large part of the reason would be for their future purposes as well as conservation type goals. So I think we're all on the same page as far as I can tell.
So one last thing, and I don't know the statute, but there was something discussed in the legislature, and I think it referred to state land, that you had to, if you were going to do a swap or a trade, that it had to be net sum zero across the board with the federal government, which BLM would fall under. Does that apply to the city of Casper?
Mr. Mayor, Council, we're not talking about a swap. We're talking about a sale.
And
So I don't think that particular reference applies, but we have asked Eric to be sure of our legal standing. And as that opinion is developed, we'd be happy, of course, to make sure you're all clear as to what the law directs.
Yeah, Mayor, we'll certainly take a look and see if there's been any legislative changes that would affect it. But at the time that we approved this initially, I believe we were comfortable that we could proceed with that sale. But obviously, before we get to the point of bringing something forward, we'll have that updated.
Kyle, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, real quick. I was just curious what mechanism we have to sell this land to the BLM without putting it out for public bid, like we have some of our other tracts of land that are currently. So what is that mechanism?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor, the bid provisions are with respect to transacting land to private owners. And so in that respect, we absolutely would have to go to bid. As it relates to working with government partners, we do not have the same requirements. And so, you will not have to anticipate a bid process as a part of this.
The state statute dictates it's only for private.
Mr. Mayor, just to add to that. So that was definitely a point of pretty robust discussion initially, because since we have an intermediary, my concern was if they were to take title and then have to transfer it to the BLM later, would that run afoul of that exemption from bidding? And so I think we got comfortable. I don't have my materials in front of me, but that was something that we vetted extensively at the outset.
Okay. Anything on the agenda review?
No, sir.
Okay. Anybody have anything quickly? All right, let's go ahead and head on.